The tree is dormant. It waits. I feel something. The moon's blessing. Impossible. The moon tree.
The road to Arinder wound through endless fields of silver grass that shimmered beneath the first light of dawn. Every passing breeze sent gentle waves across the hills, making the kingdom appear less like a land ruled by kings and more like a dream waiting to awaken. Merchants often said the road itself remembered every traveler who walked it, though no one could explain why silence always seemed to follow anyone approaching the capital. A modest wooden cart rolled steadily along the ancient stone road. Bundles of fresh herbs hung from carefully tied ropes. Glass bottles filled with healing tinctures clinked softly whenever the wheels crossed uneven stones. The faint scent of lavender, moon sage, and wild rosemary drifted through the cool morning air. Walking beside the cart was a young woman wrapped in a weathered forest green cloak. Her name was Lyra Vale. To anyone passing by, she appeared to be nothing more than another village herbal healer delivering medicine to the royal capital before winter illnesses spread through the surrounding towns. No jeweled carriage followed her. No royal escort cleared the road. No noble crest decorated her belongings. Only a hard-working woman, a wooden cart, and months of carefully prepared remedies. Lyra gently adjusted one of the herb bundles before smiling with quiet satisfaction. Every bottle had survived the journey. Every medicinal root remained fresh. That alone was enough to make the exhausting trip worthwhile. She had accepted the royal infirmary's order nearly 3 weeks earlier. The palace healers needed rare mountain herbs that grew only near the forests surrounding her village. The payment would be generous enough to support her small clinic through the coming winter. For Lyra, that mattered far more than stepping inside a royal palace. She had never cared much for nobles. Kings ruled kingdoms. Healers simply kept ordinary people alive. That balance had always made sense to her. As the road curved around the final hill, the kingdom of Arinder finally revealed itself. Towering white marble walls rose against the glowing horizon. Countless silver banners fluttered from elegant towers. Massive gates stood open as merchants, travelers, scholars, and villagers entered beneath the watchful eyes of royal guards. Morning sunlight painted the city in warm gold. Even from this distance, Arinder looked magnificent. Lyra stopped walking for only a moment. She had visited many towns before. None had ever looked like this. With a quiet breath, she continued forward. Inside the gates, life had already begun. Blacksmiths opened their workshops. Bakers carried fresh loaves into crowded markets. Children chased one another across narrow streets while elderly musicians played soft melodies beneath marble archways. Everything moved with practiced rhythm. Yet beneath that ordinary morning, another presence quietly dominated the city. It stood beyond the rooftops. Far above every tower. Higher than every palace wall. A single enormous tree stretched across the royal district. Its silver trunk gleamed beneath the rising sun. Its branches spread like the arms of an ancient guardian watching over the kingdom. Although no blossoms covered its limbs, the sacred moon tree remained impossible to ignore. Even asleep, it commanded attention. Lyra slowed without realizing it. She had heard stories about the sacred moon tree since childhood. According to old legends, it had once blessed the kingdom with peace, prosperity, and unity. Others claimed the tree had chosen rulers long before crowns existed. Most people dismissed such tales as little more than bedtime stories. After all, the tree had remained silent for centuries. No blossoms. No miracles. No signs of life beyond its timeless silver bark. Eventually, history became legend. Then legend became myth. Lyra looked away with a small smile. Ancient stories rarely helped heal fevers. She guided her cart toward the royal infirmary entrance, unaware that before the morning ended, she would become the first person in 437 years to awaken the kingdom's greatest miracle. The royal infirmary occupied the eastern wing of the palace complex, where white marble corridors overlooked carefully cultivated medicinal gardens. Unlike the lavish halls reserved for nobles, this section of the palace carried the familiar scent of dried herbs, warm broth, and freshly brewed remedies. Lyra guided her wooden cart through the service entrance, where several attendants hurried toward her. "You're the healer from Valewood?" one young apprentice asked. Lyra nodded. "I brought everything listed in your request." The apprentice's tired face immediately brightened. "Thank the moon. We've nearly exhausted our supply of mountain sage." Without ceremony, palace workers began unloading wooden crates filled with carefully bundled herbs, glass vials, and woven baskets of rare medicinal roots. Lyra inspected each bundle before allowing it inside. Several healers noticed the extra care she took. "You organize everything yourself?" an elderly palace physician asked with quiet curiosity. "I harvest them myself," Lyra replied gently. "If I don't trust the quality, I won't sell it." The physician smiled with genuine respect. "Perhaps that's why your remedies have such a reputation." For the next hour, Lyra worked alongside the palace healers instead of simply delivering supplies. She explained which herbs should never be mixed. She corrected the storage of several delicate roots that would spoil in direct sunlight. She even quietly prepared a fresh tonic for an elderly servant whose persistent cough had resisted treatment for weeks. By the time the work was finished, the infirmary staff regarded her less as a traveling merchant and more as a fellow healer. As payment was counted, the chief physician approached her. "You've been more help than we expected." Lyra accepted the leather pouch with a grateful smile. "I'm glad the journey was worthwhile." "It certainly was." The physician hesitated before adding, "The royal ceremony hasn't begun yet. If you've never visited the Moon Court, today is one of the few days common visitors are permitted inside." Lyra looked surprised. "I wouldn't want to disturb anything." "You won't. Simply remain behind the outer marble line." He smiled knowingly. "The sacred moon tree is worth seeing at least once." Curiosity quietly replaced hesitation. She had already completed her work. The return journey could wait until afternoon. After thanking the physicians, Lyra stepped back into the palace grounds. The further she walked, the quieter the surroundings became. The busy sounds of servants and marketplaces slowly disappeared behind polished marble corridors. Tall white columns lined the pathways. Silver banners bearing the royal wolf crest drifted gently in the morning breeze. Elegant fountains reflected the rising sun like liquid crystal. Every corridor seemed designed to lead visitors toward a single destination. Soon, the path opened into the vast moon court. Lyra instinctively slowed. The courtyard was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Perfect white marble stretched across an enormous ceremonial square. Graceful colonnades surrounded the open space on every side. Hundreds of nobles occupied carefully arranged seating beneath embroidered canopies. Royal guards stood motionless in polished black armor. Rows of moon priests dressed in flowing white ceremonial robes waited silently before the ancient tree. And at the heart of it all stood the sacred moon tree. Its immense silver trunk rose toward the heavens with quiet majesty. Though its branches remained bare of blossoms, its sheer size seemed impossible. It felt less like a tree and more like a monument older than the kingdom itself. Lyra stood silently at the outer edge of the court. She had no intention of approaching. She simply wished to witness the famous ceremony before beginning the long journey home. Around her, nobles whispered politely while servants carried ceremonial vessels into position. The atmosphere was solemn but familiar, as though everyone expected another ordinary ritual honoring traditions that had long since lost their miracles. No one noticed the young healer standing quietly among the visitors. No one imagined that within moments, the forgotten heart of the kingdom would awaken because she had simply come to deliver medicine. Soft ceremonial bells echoed through the moon court. One by one, conversations faded into silence. Hundreds of nobles straightened in their seats as rows of moon priests moved into perfect formation before the sacred moon tree. Lyra remained where the chief physician had instructed her to stand, just beyond the outer marble line reserved for visitors. From there, she could see nearly the entire court. White marble reflected the warm glow of the rising sun. Silver banners bearing the royal wolf insignia drifted gently overhead. Crystal basins filled with pure spring water surrounded the ancient tree in carefully arranged circles. Everything about the ceremony spoke of traditions repeated countless times before. The high moon priest slowly raised an ornate silver staff. Its polished surface caught both sunlight and the pale glow of the sacred moon tree's silver bark. His voice carried calmly across the vast courtyard. For 437 years, we have gathered beneath the sacred moon tree. He paused. We remember the covenant of our ancestors. Another pause. We honor the guardians who came before us. The assembled priests bowed together. We await the day the sacred moon tree chooses once again. Silence answered him. No light appeared. No blossoms opened. Nothing changed. No one seemed surprised. The nobles remained respectfully composed. Many had attended the same ceremony every year since childhood. The words had become tradition. The miracle had become memory. At the highest terrace overlooking the moon court sat Alpha King Rowan Ashbourne. Dressed in his black royal military coat embroidered with the silver wolf insignia, he watched the ceremony with disciplined composure. His steel-gray eyes remained fixed upon the sacred moon tree. Not with expectation. With duty. Like every king before him, he fulfilled the ancient ritual because history demanded it, not because he believed the tree would ever awaken again. Below the royal platform, attendants quietly carried ceremonial vessels toward the priests. One young servant hurried across the polished marble floor. As he approached the central altar, his foot caught the edge of his robe. A bronze ceremonial basin slipped from his hands. It struck the marble with a sharp metallic ring. The sound echoed across the silent courtyard. The basin spun rapidly before rolling away from the altar. Gasps spread through the nearby attendants. The frightened servant immediately froze. Dropping a sacred ceremonial vessel during the annual rite was considered deeply disrespectful. Before anyone else could react, the basin rolled toward the outer edge of the court. Toward Lyra. Without thinking, she stepped forward. The basin continued spinning across the polished marble until it nearly reached the roots of the sacred moon tree. Lyra gently bent down. One hand reached for the bronze basin. To steady herself against the smooth marble floor, her other hand rested lightly upon the cool silver bark of the ancient tree. It was the briefest touch. Gentle. Careless. Entirely innocent. For a single heartbeat. Nothing happened. Lyra lifted the basin and turned toward the terrified servant with an apologetic smile. I think this belongs to you. Then. A faint silver pulse shimmered beneath her fingertips. So subtle that she almost believed she had imagined it. Tiny veins of pale moonlight spread slowly beneath the bark. One priest frowned. Another looked up. The high moon priest stopped speaking in the middle of his prayer. Across the enormous courtyard, Alpha King Rowan leaned forward on his throne. No one moved. No one breathed. The sacred moon tree had just answered a touch for the first time in 437 years. The silver light spread no farther. For one endless heartbeat, the sacred moon tree remained perfectly still. The entire moon court stood frozen. No one spoke. No one dared move. Lyra slowly withdrew her hand from the ancient bark. She looked at her fingertips with quiet confusion. Did I imagine that? The faint silver veins beneath the trunk flickered once. Then again. This time brighter. A low, almost imperceptible hum rose from somewhere deep within the immense tree. It was unlike any sound made by wood or wind. It felt ancient. Alive. The high moon priest stared in disbelief. His fingers tightened around the silver ceremonial staff. No. The whisper escaped before he realized he had spoken aloud. Several younger priests exchanged frightened glances. One stepped backward. Another fell to his knees without understanding why. Across the court, the nobles leaned forward in their seats. What is happening? Did you see that? The trunk is glowing. It can't be. At the highest terrace, Alpha King Rowan Ashbourne rose slowly from his throne. His steel-gray eyes never left the sacred moon tree. Every instinct told him he was witnessing something impossible. For centuries, kings had stood exactly where he stood now. None had ever seen the tree respond. Yet the silver light continued growing stronger. Thin strings of moonlight raced upward through the trunk like living veins awakening after an endless sleep. The glow climbed higher. Higher. Branch after branch. Limb after limb. The entire sacred moon tree seemed to breathe for the first time in centuries. Lyra instinctively stepped backward. I didn't do anything. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I only picked up the basin. No one answered her. No one could. Every eye remained fixed upon the awakening tree. A faint crack echoed overhead. Not the sound of breaking wood. The sound of ancient branches stretching after an age of silence. Then came another. And another. Silver light burst through every limb. The entire canopy ignited with soft celestial radiance. Thousands of dormant buds appeared where only bare branches had existed moments before. For one impossible second, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then every bud bloomed at once. An ocean of radiant white blossoms exploded across the sacred moon tree. Countless silver petals burst into the morning air like a silent snowfall of moonlight. The courtyard disappeared beneath drifting blossoms. Marble terraces. Royal banners. Ceremonial altars. Everything became wrapped in luminous silver. Gasps erupted throughout the moon court. Several nobles stumbled backward. Others dropped to their knees. One elderly council member covered his mouth with trembling hands. The prophecy. A young priest openly wept. It has awakened. The high moon priest slowly released his ceremonial staff. It struck the marble floor with a clear metallic echo. He no longer seemed aware of it. Tears streamed freely down his weathered face. For 437 years. His voice trembled. We prayed. He lowered himself completely to his knees before the radiant tree. And today? His gaze lifted toward the young healer standing beneath the falling blossoms. The sacred moon tree has answered. At that very moment, a gentle wind swept through the moon court. Thousands of glowing silver petals drifted toward Lyra. Not toward the priests. Not toward the nobles. Not toward the king. Only toward her. The entire kingdom watched in stunned silence as the ancient tree welcomed the unknown healer like someone it had been waiting centuries to meet. The silver petals continued falling in complete silence. No music played. No priest spoke. No command came from the throne. Only the gentle whisper of countless blossoms drifting through the morning air. Lyra stood motionless beneath the sacred moon tree. The petals landed softly upon her cloak, her shoulders, and her chestnut hair before slowly dissolving into tiny points of silver light. She looked around in quiet disbelief. Every face in the moon court was turned toward her. Her voice faltered. I don't understand. She took one uncertain step backward. Then another. This had to be some mistake. She was only a healer. She had come to deliver medicine. Nothing more. The frightened servant who had dropped the bronze basin stared at her with wide eyes. You touched it, he whispered. The tree chose you. His words spread through the surrounding crowd like ripples across still water. The tree chose her. Did you hear him? It chose her. The sacred moon tree chose her. Within moments, whispers filled every corner of the moon court. Nobles leaned toward one another, unable to hide their astonishment. Who is she? What noble house does she belong to? I've never seen her before. Surely she's descended from one of the ancient priestly families. No. Another quietly replied. Someone said she arrived this morning with herbal supplies. A common healer? Impossible. Across the courtyard, the High Moon Priest slowly lifted his head. His eyes never left Lyra. He had spent his entire life studying forgotten chronicles, ancient prophecies, sacred rituals. Every surviving record spoke of one truth. The sacred moon tree never awakened by accident. It never answered ambition. It never recognized power. It chose only according to the ancient covenant. Which meant this young woman had not caused a miracle. She had fulfilled one. The realization sent a visible tremor through the elderly priest. At the royal platform, Alpha King Rowan Ashbourne remained standing. His advisors waited for instructions. None came. Instead, Rowan quietly descended the marble steps leading from the throne. Each measured footstep echoed across the silent courtyard. No guards followed him. No attendants announced him. The king walked alone. The assembled court instinctively moved aside. A clear path formed between Rowan and Lyra. She noticed him approaching and immediately lowered her eyes in respect. "My king," she said softly. "I'm sorry if I've disturbed the ceremony." Rowan stopped several paces before her. For several long moments, he simply looked at the young healer standing beneath the flowering branches. She showed no pride. No excitement. No hunger for recognition. Only honest confusion. The blossoms continued falling around them. Rowan finally spoke. His voice was calm, measured, and carried effortlessly across the silent moon court. "What is your name?" Lyra slowly raised her eyes. "My name is Lyra Vale," she answered quietly. "I come from the village of Valewood." The king held her gaze for another thoughtful moment. Then he turned slowly toward the radiant sacred moon tree towering above them. Its silver branches continued glowing with peaceful life. 437 years of silence had ended. Not because a king had commanded it. Not because priests had prayed harder. Not because nobles had demanded a sign. It had awakened for a young healer who had expected nothing more than an ordinary day's work. And as every person in the moon court watched the blossoms continue to fall around Lyra Vale, one truth settled over the kingdom of Arinder with undeniable certainty. Nothing in their kingdom would ever be the same again. No one moved. The silence that followed the king's question seemed even deeper than the miracle itself. "My name is Lyra Vale." The words lingered beneath the flowering canopy. "I come from the village of Valewood." Several nobles quietly repeated the name to themselves. "Vale? I've never heard of that family. It isn't one of the great houses." One elderly duke frowned. "There is no noble bloodline by that name." Another council member answered in an uneasy whisper. "Then why would the sacred moon tree choose her?" No one had an answer. Even the High Moon Priest remained silent. King Rowan continued studying Lyra. She did not resemble someone hiding a grand secret. Her cloak was faded from years of travel. The leather belt around her waist held bundles of dried herbs instead of jeweled ornaments. Her hands carried the faint calluses of someone accustomed to harvesting roots, preparing medicine, and tending the sick. There was nothing about her appearance that suggested power. And yet, the sacred moon tree had awakened for her. Rowan finally spoke again. "You said you came here to deliver medicine." "Yes, Your Majesty." "You expected no audience with the court?" "No." "You knew nothing of today's ceremony?" Lyra shook her head gently. The palace physician simply said visitors were permitted to see the moon court before returning home. Her answer came without hesitation. Without calculation. The honesty in her voice was unmistakable. The king glanced toward the High Moon Priest. "Do you believe she prepared this?" The elderly priest looked genuinely startled. "Your Majesty." His weathered eyes returned to the radiant tree. "No living person possesses the power to awaken the sacred moon tree." He slowly approached the silver trunk. With trembling fingers, he rested his hand against the glowing bark. The tree answered immediately. Soft silver light flowed beneath his palm. Then quietly faded. No blossoms moved. No new light spread. The priest withdrew his hand. It acknowledges me, he whispered. But it does not answer me. He turned toward Lyra. When she touched the tree, his voice trembled with emotion. It awakened completely. A murmur spread through the assembled court once again. The distinction was impossible to ignore. Anyone could touch the sacred moon tree. Only one person had awakened it. One of the younger moon priests hurried toward the marble pedestal where the ancient illuminated manuscript rested. He carefully turned several fragile parchment pages. Each illustration depicted different generations gathered beneath the sacred moon tree. Kings, priests, guardians, ancient ceremonies. Then his hand suddenly stopped. His breathing caught. High priest. The elderly priest looked up. There is another page. The manuscript had been copied and studied for centuries. Every surviving scholar believed the final pages had faded beyond recognition. Yet now, under the gentle silver radiance of the awakened tree, new ink slowly emerged across the ancient parchment. Delicate silver symbols spread across the page as though written by an invisible hand. Illustrations hidden for centuries gradually revealed themselves. The gathered priests stared in complete disbelief. One by one, they lowered themselves to their knees. The high moon priest approached the manuscript with trembling hands. He did not touch the page. He simply looked. Tears filled his eyes almost immediately. It wasn't erased, he whispered. It was waiting. King Rowan stepped beside him. What does it say? The old priest struggled to steady his voice. It speaks of. He swallowed hard. The last moon priestess. For the first time since the sacred moon tree had awakened, uncertainty crossed Lyra's face. She had never heard those words before. But somewhere deep inside her, the title felt strangely familiar. The words settled over the moon court like another wave of silence. The last moon priestess. No one dared repeat them aloud. For centuries, the title had survived only in fragments of forgotten songs and fading legends. Most scholars believed the moon priestesses had vanished long before the founding of the modern kingdom. Many questioned whether they had ever existed at all. Yet the awakened manuscript told a different story. The high moon priest remained motionless before the ancient pages. Silver letters continued appearing slowly across the parchment, each line illuminated by the gentle radiance flowing from the sacred moon tree. It was as though the book had been waiting centuries for enough light to reveal its hidden history. King Rowan lowered his voice. Read it. The elderly priest nodded. His hands trembled as he carefully began reading the restored passage. When the sacred moon grows silent, its chosen guardian shall disappear from the eyes of kingdoms. The blood of the moon priestesses shall not perish. It shall remain hidden, until the sacred tree awakens once more. A murmur swept through the gathered priests. Several covered their mouths in disbelief. One elderly scholar whispered, "We were wrong. We believed the entire bloodline had ended." Another priest slowly shook his head. It never ended. It was hidden. The high moon priest continued reading. The chosen daughter shall not be raised among crowns, nor beneath palace roofs. She shall walk among ordinary people, healing before ruling, serving before being recognized. Every sentence tightened the silence surrounding Lyra. She stared at the ancient manuscript with growing confusion. None of it made sense. She had grown up in a tiny woodland village. Her parents had never spoken of royal blood. Her adoptive grandmother had taught her nothing except kindness, patience, and the healing properties of plants. There had been no prophecies. No sacred rituals. No hidden destiny. Only simple people living simple lives. She looked toward the high moon priest. There must be some mistake. The old man slowly lifted his eyes. I prayed for decades that there was. His voice carried neither excitement nor triumph. Only certainty. But the sacred moon tree cannot be deceived. Lyra instinctively shook her head. I don't belong here. She looked around the enormous court. I'm not a priestess. I'm not a noble. I'm not even educated in your traditions. I only know herbs. She almost smiled sadly. I can barely remember the old moon songs my grandmother used to hum. The moment those words left her lips, the high moon priest froze. What did you say? Lyra blinked. My grandmother. What songs? The old moon songs. I don't remember the words. I was very young. The elderly priest slowly approached her. His breathing had become noticeably uneven. Did she ever tell you where she learned them? Lyra searched her memory. She only said. Her voice softened. That they had been sung by the women in our family for longer than anyone could remember. The priest closed his eyes. A single tear rolled down his weathered face. The lineage, he whispered. It survived. King Rowan watched the exchange without interrupting. Every answer uncovered another mystery. Instead of solving one, the king turned toward his royal council. No one leaves the moon court. His calm voice immediately restored order. Seal the gates. The captain of the royal guard struck his fist across his chest. At once, Your Majesty. Heavy bronze gates slowly closed around the sacred courtyard. Not to imprison anyone, but to protect the greatest discovery the kingdom had witnessed in more than 4 centuries. As the final gate echoed shut behind them, Lyra felt an unfamiliar weight settle in her heart. She had entered the palace carrying nothing more than a cart of medicine. Now, before she could even return home, an entire kingdom was beginning to believe she carried the last surviving secret of its forgotten past. The heavy bronze gates closed with a deep echo that rolled across the moon court. Outside, the kingdom continued its ordinary mourning. Inside, history had stopped. Royal guards quietly took their positions before every entrance. No swords were drawn. No one was treated as a prisoner. But no one would leave until the king understood what had happened beneath the sacred moon tree. Lyra stood where she had been since the blossoms first appeared. The silver petals had begun to fall more slowly now, drifting lazily through the calm morning air. She looked toward the sealed gates. My herbs, she whispered almost to herself. Several nearby nobles exchanged puzzled glances. Lyra looked genuinely distressed. The physicians still have to organize the medicines properly. If the mountain sage stays bundled too long. She hesitated. It can lose its strength. The high moon priest stared at her in astonishment. Even now, after awakening the oldest miracle in the kingdom, she was worried about herbs. King Rowan noticed it as well. He had expected questions. Fear. Perhaps excitement. Instead, the young woman seemed more concerned about patients she would never meet than the attention of an entire royal court. Something about that quiet compassion unsettled him more than the miracle itself. It matched the prophecy. She shall walk among ordinary people, healing before ruling. The words returned to his mind. Not as poetry. As fact. One of the royal advisors stepped forward. He bowed respectfully before the king. Your Majesty. If the manuscript speaks true. He lowered his voice. Every neighboring kingdom will seek her. Another advisor answered immediately. Or eliminate her. The sentence spread a chill through the gathered council. Everyone understood the danger. For centuries the sacred moon tree had been silent. Its awakening would not remain secret for long. Messengers. Merchants. Travelers. Someone would carry the story beyond Arinder before sunset. And once they did, every throne on the continent would begin asking the same question. Who was Lyra Vale? The king's expression hardened slightly. Captain. The commander of the royal guard stepped forward. Yes, Your Majesty. Increase security throughout the palace. No one approaches Lady Lyra without permission. Lyra immediately looked up. Your Majesty. There is no need. I don't require guards. Rowan met her eyes. That is no longer your decision. His tone remained calm rather than commanding. This morning, you were an unknown healer. He glanced briefly toward the awakened sacred moon tree. This morning has ended. Before Lyra could respond, hurried footsteps echoed beneath the marble colonnade. A young palace messenger rushed into the moon court, breathing heavily. He stopped several paces from the throne and bowed deeply. Forgive the interruption, Your Majesty. I bring urgent news. Rowan nodded. Speak. The city. The messenger struggled to catch his breath. Has seen the blossoms. Confused murmurs spread across the court. The blossoms? The messenger pointed toward the palace walls. They're appearing everywhere. Everyone instinctively turned. Beyond the white marble terraces, the rooftops of Arinder stretched toward the horizon. From this distance, tiny flashes of silver shimmered throughout the city. The courtyard gardens. Temple courtyards. Stone fountains. Even neglected trees growing beside narrow streets. Small white blossoms had begun opening across the capital. Not because those trees possessed magic, but because the sacred moon tree had awakened. Its blessing was spreading. The high moon priest watched in silent amazement. It has begun. What has? Rowan asked quietly. The old priest smiled through tears. The kingdom remembers. Every eye turned toward the city beyond the palace. Children below pointed excitedly toward flowering branches. Church bells began ringing across distant districts. Citizens emerged from their homes, staring upward in wonder as silver petals drifted through streets that had never known them before. Standing beneath the ancient tree, Lyra felt the breeze carry one glowing blossom gently into her hands. She looked down at the delicate flower resting in her palm. For reasons she could not explain, it felt like coming home. Lyra gently closed her fingers around the glowing blossom. Its petals were cool against her skin. Not cold. Comforting. As though the flower recognized her long before she had ever known it existed. Around the moon court, no one spoke. Every eye remained fixed upon the single blossom resting in her hand. The high moon priest slowly lowered himself to one knee once more. Then another priest followed. And another. Within moments, every moon priest beneath the sacred moon tree knelt in silent reverence. Not to Lyra herself, but to the ancient covenant that had returned through her. The surrounding nobles hesitated. For generations, they had bowed only to the king. Some exchanged uncertain glances. Others looked toward Rowan, waiting for instruction. The Alpha King understood their hesitation. He slowly stepped forward until he stood beside Lyra beneath the flowering canopy. Then, before the entire royal court, he spoke with calm authority. Rise. The kneeling priests obeyed immediately. Rowan's voice carried clearly across the marble courtyard. The sacred moon tree has honored Miss Lyra. He paused, allowing every word to settle. That does not make her an object of worship. The priests lowered their heads in understanding. It makes her a person under the protection of the crown. A quiet murmur swept through the assembled nobles. The declaration changed everything. Lyra would not become a prisoner of the temple, nor a symbol to be claimed by competing factions. She would stand beneath the king's protection. Rowan turned toward the captain of the royal guard. Assign only those whose loyalty is beyond question. Yes, Your Majesty. They are to protect Miss Lyra. He looked directly at the captain. They are not to confine her. The captain struck his fist against his breastplate. It will be done. Lyra looked at Rowan with surprise. You trust me? The question escaped before she could stop it. A faint smile touched the king's face. I trust the sacred moon tree. His answer was simple. If it has placed its faith in you, He glanced toward the radiant silver canopy overhead. I have no reason to place mine elsewhere. Before Lyra could answer, another voice echoed across the moon court. It belonged to one of the oldest royal historians, a frail man whose family had preserved the kingdom's chronicles for generations. He stood beside the illuminated manuscript, staring at a page no one else had yet examined. Your Majesty. His voice trembled. There is another illustration. The High Moon Priest immediately joined him. Unlike the earlier pages, this one had remained almost completely blank. Now, beneath the light of the awakened tree, silver ink slowly flowed across the parchment. An image gradually emerged. It showed the sacred moon tree in full bloom. Beneath its branches stood two figures. One wore the ceremonial robes of a moon priestess. The other wore the royal cloak of an alpha king. They did not stand opposite one another as ruler and subject. They stood side by side beneath the flowering canopy. Above them, the tree spread its radiant branches like a blessing over both. The historian could barely breathe. I've never seen this page. No one has, the High Moon Priest whispered. The ink was hidden. King Rowan stepped closer. Is there an inscription? The old historian leaned forward, carefully reading the newly revealed silver script. His expression slowly changed from curiosity to disbelief. When he finally looked up, his face had gone pale. What does it say? Rowan asked. The historian swallowed. His voice was barely audible. It says. He looked first at Lyra. Then at the king. When the Moon Priestess returns, the fate of the kingdom shall never again belong to one alone. Silence fell once more beneath the flowering branches. Neither Lyra nor Rowan spoke. Yet as they stood beneath the awakened sacred moon tree, both realized the ancient covenant had revealed something even more unexpected than the miracle itself. Their destinies had become inseparable. Silence lingered beneath the flowering canopy. The words from the ancient manuscript echoed through every mind in the moon court. When the Moon Priestess returns, the fate of the kingdom shall never again belong to one alone. No one dared interpret them aloud. The implication was too great. Too dangerous. King Rowan remained standing beside Lyra, his expression unreadable. He had ruled Arinder with discipline since the day he inherited the throne. Every decision had been his alone. Every burden had rested on his shoulders. Now an ancient covenant suggested that the kingdom's future had already chosen another path. Not by politics. Not by bloodline. But by something far older. Lyra lowered her eyes. I don't understand any of this. Her voice was soft enough that only Rowan heard it. I've never wanted power. I don't even know what a moon priestess truly is. The king looked toward the sacred moon tree before answering. I believe you. His words carried quiet certainty. And perhaps that is exactly why it chose you. Before Lyra could reply, the High Moon Priest carefully closed the ancient manuscript. The silver writing faded from the exposed page, disappearing once again beneath the aged parchment. He placed both hands upon the weathered cover. It will reveal no more today. Several younger priests looked disappointed. Why? The elderly priest smiled gently. The sacred moon tree has never revealed every answer at once. He turned toward the flowering branches. It teaches patience. The miracle had awakened. The prophecy had begun. But the future would unfold one step at a time. King Rowan nodded thoughtfully. Then we will not force what is meant to come. He stepped forward, addressing the entire royal court. His voice rang clearly through the marble colonnades. Today we have witnessed an event unseen for 437 years. No one interrupted. The sacred moon tree has awakened. It has recognized Lyra Vale before this entire kingdom. He paused. Until the truth of these ancient revelations is fully understood. His gaze swept across the nobles, priests, and council alike. No rumor shall outweigh wisdom. No fear shall replace justice. And no hand shall be raised against the woman whom the sacred moon tree has openly blessed. One by one, the assembled nobles lowered their heads. Even those who doubted the prophecy recognized the king's authority. The command was absolute. The high moon priest struck the base of his silver staff gently against the marble floor. The covenant is witnessed. The gathered priests repeated together. The covenant is witnessed. Royal guards lowered their ceremonial spears in solemn respect. Council elders bowed. Servants knelt. Across the moon court, hundreds of voices united for the first time. The covenant is witnessed. Lyra stood speechless. Only hours earlier, she had entered the palace with a cart filled with herbs. Now the greatest voices of the kingdom spoke words she barely understood because of a destiny she had never sought. A gentle breeze swept once more through the flowering canopy. Thousands of silver petals drifted across the courtyard like falling stars. Some settled upon the ancient manuscript. Some upon the king's black ceremonial cloak. Most continued circling quietly around Lyra before floating toward the city beyond the palace walls. Far below, the bells of Arinder continued ringing. Citizens filled the streets, gazing upward as silver blossoms appeared throughout the capital. Hope spread from house to house faster than any royal proclamation ever could. The kingdom of Arinder had awakened alongside its sacred moon tree. And somewhere beyond the distant mountains, unseen eyes would soon hear whispers of a miracle that should have been impossible. A forgotten moon priestess had returned. An Alpha King had witnessed the ancient covenant with his own eyes. And before long, the rest of the world would come searching for them both.